Let's just kick it off just to warm up here. How did you identify that Nubank was a good opportunity, and what were the first 100 days? Take us through the first 100 days.
Sure. So I think the Nubank opportunity was an opportunity that only a gringo would have been able to see. It's funny sometimes how your perceived weaknesses might actually be strengths. And I say that because in a market like Brazilian banking or even Latin American banking, there is a fair amount of commercial wisdom. There is you get to a point in your day-to-day with your day-to-day services that, especially when they don't work well, after a lot of frustrating scenarios, that you conclude that this is the way things are and this is the way things are always going to be. And when you deal with some of these big companies, there's always the sense that there's nothing you can do. There's nothing that anybody can do because you're talking about the biggest companies in the country or in the region. And so I think that you needed somebody from the outside that had a fair amount of naivete to say, actually, wait, hold on. How is it possible that these banks are treating people this way? How is it possible that people are putting up with this? Why aren't they going somewhere else? Why aren't there more alternatives? And at the same time, this is the most valuable industry in Latin America. These are the most profitable banks in the world. How could you have on one end really frustrated consumers, and on the other end, the most profitable companies, some of the most profitable companies in the world, and nobody's actually doing anything about it? So I think gringos, and generally I wouldn't call it gringos, say just outsiders, get to ask those questions. And for insiders, it's very hard to ask them because they've ingrained and they've lived in that conventional wisdom all of their life. So that's a bit of the story. Like I did go through that experience, and I had a bit of a prepared mind as I had spent a lot of time looking at financial services with an investor hat and knowing how attractive this industry was, and also looking at technology, at the technology sector with Sequoia to try to find opportunities to invest. So it's almost like this prepared mind meeting the opportunity with a fair amount of naivete and asking a lot of questions that ultimately translated into the opportunity of Nubank. And obviously, I think it's important to be an outsider. An outsider has a lot of opportunities, but it also brings a bunch of weaknesses with it. Like, I don't think I could have been able to execute this if I hadn't had a fair amount of insiders together with me. And that's where Chris, as a co-founder, come in. She's the perfect insider. She knows the system inside out. She came from Itaú. She has a huge network of people in Brazil. She could access regulators. She's charismatic. She's extroverted. In a way, I'm a bit of the opposite of her in some of those areas. So we were very complementary. And then Ed coming in as the technology co-founder, really helping build a technology strategy. So I think the outsider brings some advantages, but it's not enough. You need to complement the team with real complementary people that ultimately are able to fill the gaps that you're going to have to be able to execute successfully.
It makes a lot of sense, the outsider perspective, having a fresh pair of eyes on something that normally conventional wisdom is like, this isn't possible, right? Talk about those first 100 days, because I remember like a lot of our friends signed up, and tell us how you got the flywheel going initially.
Sure. And obviously it depends on when you start counting. I would start counting probably, so I had worked for maybe about 3 weeks putting together the pitch of the idea, doing the deck. And I had it very crystallized, and then I had to go back to California to meet with Sequoia. I was still working sort of half with them. And that's when I presented the pitch and to some of the partners there. And initially they were like, I don't know, this is a bank in Brazil, a city, we don't really do that. And after a couple of meetings with more people, eventually at the end of the week, they were all excited and say, all right, fine, we're in. Here you go. $1 million. Let's see what you can do. You got to find a local partner. And I remember very well Doug Leone, who was my mentor there, like right on the exit of the Sequoia offices, he gave me like a pat on the back and says, all right, let's see what you can do. And to me, that was like, all right, gave me some, Doug, gave me some. And so maybe that was actually the moment, because before, I had been working a lot on the presentation, but that was the moment where I said, okay, there's $1 million. Now I got to do it. And I cannot fail my mentor. Failure is not an option. This got to work. And so from there, in the next 100 days, it was just a race to get it to form something out of nothing. Like this is an amazing process where how do you take a slide of a bank in Brazil to actually building a bank? Like it's a massive endeavor. And a lot of it was kind of dividing in pieces. The first piece was building that initial team and looking for those co-founders. And so it was just meeting a lot of different people like crazy, 10, 15 different coffees per day, until finally was lucky to find Chris and Ed, and with them it was like boom. It was great cultural alignment, perfect fit. They're both excited. They both accepted in like 48 hours. And once they were in, then it was the three of us doing the same thing. Okay, fine, what's the next? All right, we got to find some engineers, and we got to find an office. And it was almost like looking at solving the following next problem. And it was about 12 months, obviously more than 100 days, but it was 12 months where we were recruiting the initial team up to 10 people and building sort of the skeleton that eventually took us to the first credit card issued that we could use to buy stuff. But it was 12 months of just a ton of work, a lot of urgency, a lot of unanswered questions. You just gotta. I tell entrepreneurs sometimes, if you wait to get answers for all your questions before you start, you're never really gonna start, because there's just so much uncertainty initially, and that's totally okay. If there wasn't uncertainty, somebody else would have done it before. So it's a lot of it is like finding the answers as you find the questions. And if you have a great team of great problem solvers with a lot of sense of urgency and the conditions exist, then things will happen and you get to launch, and then you get to scale.